Commander Velktar had been teaching weapons safety for 23 years, which meant he'd seen every possible way a cadet could hold a plasma rifle incorrectly. The Mixori tried gripping it with their tendrils and ended up pointing it at their own mass. The Vrexian cadets treated it like a club. The Quilven kept trying to fire it with their minds, which would have been impressive if it had ever worked. Today's class was different, though. Today he was using Earth as a teaching tool. "Observe," Velktar said, his scaled hands adjusting the plasma rifle's calibration display. Behind him, a hologram of a blue-green planet rotated slowly, looking aggressively average. Designation: Terra, Sol 3. Classification: Death World, though the locals dispute this with admirable stubbornness. A few cadets chittered. One, a young Kryn named Jaxel with more ambition than sense, raised a fur claw. "Sir, isn't that where the Terrans come from?" "Correct. They call themselves humans, which translates roughly to ground dweller in most languages. An origin story so uninspiring it loops back to being tragic." Velktar tapped the rifle. "Now, even species from primitive worlds understand energy weapon protocol. You don't point. You don't prime. And you certainly don't." His third finger, the one with reduced sensation from an old sparring injury, brushed the trigger guard. The rifle shrieked. Plasma doesn't move like a bullet. It moves like rage given form, a superheated bolt of ionized gas that screams through air at a speed that makes fast an inadequate word. This particular bolt, calibrated for training scenarios but still hot enough to slag steel, tore across the classroom in a brilliant blue streak directly toward Cadet Velis, a Mixori whose gelatinous body was roughly 70% flammable hydrocarbons. Velktar's brain, honed by 3 decades of combat, supplied several facts in the half-second he had. Velis was going to die. The lawsuit was going to be spectacular. His pension was gone. His mate was going to kill him before the Academy Board could. Then a figure moved, not ran, not dove. Moved with the kind of economy that suggested the universe had been measured, found wanting, and dismissed. Instructor Chun, who'd been standing at the back of the classroom, reviewing training schedules on her datapad, was suddenly 15 feet forward and slightly left. Her right hand came up, fingers splayed. She caught the plasma bolt. For a moment, a crystalline, perfect moment where physics held its breath. The bolt hissed and spat in her palm. A miniature star trying to decide whether to collapse or explode. Chun's hand tightened. There was a sound like a wet towel hitting a hot griddle. A burst of steam, and then nothing. She'd crushed it out. The classroom had gone silent in that unique way. That only happens when 20 different species, each with their own concept of possible, simultaneously encounter the impossible. Velis's tendrils had frozen mid-recoil. Jaxel's jaw hung open, showing all 3 rows of teeth. Even the Quilven had stopped trying to levitate and were just staring. Velktar found his voice first. "Instructor Chun, sir." Her voice was flat, professional. Her hand, he noticed, was smoking slightly. She didn't seem concerned. "Did you just—" He paused, reptilian brain trying to process mammalian audacity. "Did you just catch a plasma discharge?" "Yes, sir." "With your hand?" "Yes, sir." "You're unprotected, unshielded, flesh and bone hand." Chun glanced down at her palm, which was red and blistered, but not, notably, melted to the bone. "Technically, it's mostly water and carbon, sir. But yes, someone in the back, probably Jaxel, made a sound like a kettle achieving sentience and immediately regretting it." "That's not possible," Velktar said. "Because someone had to say it." Chun shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both agreement and complete indifference to the laws of thermodynamics. The trajectory was predictable. Plasma bolts from XT7 training rifles follow a standard arc. Heat dispersion is consistent within 0.3%. And the contact duration was only 0.7 seconds. You just have to account for the thermal gradient and adjust grip pressure accordingly. The silence in the room had evolved. It was no longer shock. It was the silence of 20 cadets realizing they'd been attending class with someone who casually discussed catching superheated ionized gas the way one might describe catching a ball. Velkthar started again. Instructor, that bolt was traveling at 11,000 meters per second. 11,200, sir. I checked the rifle's calibration last week. Chun looked at her hand again, flexed her fingers experimentally. I should probably get this looked at. Third-degree burns are supposed to be reported within the hour, per Safety Protocol Section 7.4. You're worried about filing paperwork? This from Cadet Morrill, a sultan whose gas form was currently fluctuating between colors that didn't exist in standard spectrum. And if I don't file the incident report, medical won't have proper documentation, which means payroll flags it. Which means I spend next week arguing with admin about benefits coverage. Chun's expression remained neutral. I've done that twice already this quarter. I'm not doing it again. Velkthar felt something he hadn't experienced since his third tour in the contested reaches. The cold, creeping sensation that he'd made a terrible miscalculation. Humans were listed as Category C auxiliary personnel low threat, support roles only. There were 17 of them on station, mostly in logistics and maintenance. They kept to themselves, filed their reports on time, and generally faded into the institutional background with the same enthusiasm as cleaning, schedules, and safety briefings. He'd been teaching weapons safety with one standing 3 meters away for 8 months. Instructor, Chun, he said carefully, how many humans can do what you just did? She considered this. Catch plasma specifically. Maybe 1 in 5, depending on training. Most merchant marine veterans can manage it. It's part of standard damage control certification. 1 in 5, Velkthar repeated. Yes, sir. Though most prefer not to, because the burns are annoying and dermal regeneration takes 3 to 4 days. She paused. Also, it's usually easier to just dodge. Dodge? Yes, sir. Jaxel raised his foreclaw again, this time trembling slightly. Sir, I think I need to recalibrate my understanding of human baseline physiology. You and me both, Cadet, Velkthar muttered. He looked at his rifle, then at Chun, then at Veles, who still hadn't moved and might actually have calcified from shock. Class dismissed. Everyone except Instructor Chun, who was going to medical now. Chun nodded, finally tucking her datapad away. As she walked toward the door, her burned hand held loosely at her side. She passed Velkthar close enough that he could smell scorched skin and something else. Something that smelled like determination and exhaustion in equal measure. Sir, she said quietly. Yes. Instructor? Next time you want to make a point about trigger discipline, maybe use the dummy rifle. It's in the cabinet. 3rd shelf. She left. The classroom stayed silent for another 15 seconds. Then Jaxel spoke, his voice very small. Did she just imply the commander fired that on accident? Velkthar didn't answer. He was too busy staring at his hand. The one with reduced sensation. The one that had slipped out 23 years teaching weapons safety. 23 years without a single incident. And today, with a human in the room, he'd nearly killed a cadet. He looked at the classroom, at the cadets who were now whispering among themselves, their languages blending into a chorus of confusion and awe. Then he looked at the hologram of Earth, still rotating placidly, a blue-green ball of gravity and violence wrapped in an atmosphere that could rust metal. Change of plans, Velkthar announced. Tomorrow's lesson is going to be about human physiological tolerances. Read chapters 12 through 18 of the Xenobiology Manual. All of it. Sir, Morrill ventured. That's over 300 pages. Then I suggest you start reading now. The medical bay smelled like disinfectant and regret, which Dr. Krill found appropriate given the circumstances. She'd been a field medic for the Veshkari Colonial Health Service for 16 years before taking this academy posting. And in that time, she'd treated everything from radiation poisoning to spontaneous molecular dissolution. She had never, not once, had to scan someone who'd grabbed a weapons discharge like it was a misbehaving child. Chun sat on the examination platform, her hand submerged in a regeneration gel bath that glowed faint blue. She looked bored. Fascinating, Dr. Krill murmured, her compound eyes reviewing the scan results on 3 separate screens simultaneously. Your dermal layer shows thermal damage consistent with exposure to ionized gas at approximately 4,000 degrees. But the underlying tissue, minimal penetration, is like you have built-in ablative shielding. Learned it on a scoop freighter in the Helios Belt. Captain was ex-military. Ran drills every week. Said the difference between cargo and weapons is just a matter of velocity and intent. Chun flexed her burned hands. Plasma is just superheated gas. You don't fight it, you guide it. And now you've taught an entire species cohort that humans think of weapons as cargo that happens to be moving fast. Velkthar's scales rippled with genuine amusement. For what it's worth, that shot yesterday 70% planned, 30% genuine mistake. I wanted to scare them. I didn't expect you to make me look incompetent. You're not incompetent. You're just used to teaching species who solve problems with armor instead of audacity. Chun started toward the exit, then stopped. Next time you want to make a teaching point, give me warning. I hate paperwork. Noted. And Chun? Sir? Welcome to the permanent instructor roster. Try not to catch anything else for at least a week. Medical is still processing yesterday's incident reports. Chun left, her burned hands already beginning to heal. Her datapad already accumulating. New messages from cadets asking about deflection training. Velkthar stood alone in the empty assembly hall and considered what had just happened. A human auxiliary had turned a near-fatal accident into a curriculum revision. She'd done it by refusing to be exceptional, by insisting loudly and repeatedly that what she could do was merely the product of training and spite, which meant somewhere in the galaxy there were stations and ships and outposts full of humans who could do exactly the same thing, and nobody had bothered to ask. The oversight was galactic, and Chun had just made it impossible to ignore. Velkthar smiled, a predatory expression that showed all his teeth. Humans didn't just endure their death world. They'd internalized it, weaponized it, turned survival into instinct and impossibility into Tuesday afternoon. The galaxy had categorized them as auxiliary personnel. The galaxy, Velkthar realized, had made a magnificent mistake. And humanity stubborn, relentless, impossibly human was just getting started. It's called sweat, Chine said. Evaporative cooling. The initial moisture layer on my palm absorbed most of the thermal load before direct contact. You sweat as a defense mechanism? We sweat because our homeworld is a convection oven with delusions of habitability. Defense is just a bonus feature. Dr. Krill's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. She was about to request a vascular density scan when the medical bay doors hissed open with enough force to suggest whoever was entering had opinions about doors in general. Station. Security Officer Tanak stumped in on 4 of his 6 legs. The other 2 clutching a datapad and what appeared to be a portable scanner. He was an Aldery, which meant he looked like someone had asked a nightmare to design a crab and then given it anxiety. His eye stalks swiveled independently, taking in Chun, Dr. Krill, and the 3 exits with equal paranoia. Instructor Chun, he said, his translator rendering his clicking into something approximating bureaucratic dread. I need to ask you several hundred questions. I filed the incident report, Chun said. Yes, I read it twice. Then I had 3 junior officers read it to confirm I wasn't hallucinating. Your report claims you, quote, intercepted and neutralized a plasma discharge through manual intervention. That's accurate. That's impossible. Chun lifted her hand from the gel bath. The burns were already fading, pink skin replacing angry red. And yet, here we are. Tanax's eye stalks quivered. Dr. Krill recognized the symptoms. He was approximately 40 seconds from a stress molt. Do you understand? He said slowly, that what you did violates approximately 9 safety regulations, contradicts 4 laws of physics as currently understood, and has generated 17 formal complaints from cadets, who now believe their human instructors are secretly weapons platforms. I'm not a weapon, Chun said. Then what are you? Tired, mostly? Dr. Krill intervened before Tanax could molt on her nice clean floor. Officer, perhaps we should approach this systematically. Instructor Chun's physiology is clearly divergent from the standard profile we use for humans. I'm seeing muscle density 40% above average. Bone structure reinforced with... She paused, squinting at the scan. Is that calcium carbonate composite? All human bones are calcium composite, Chun said. It's basic skeletal structure. Not like this. Your skeletal integrity could withstand impacts that would shatter most species. And your cardiovascular system. You have redundant arterial pathways throughout your upper body. If I severed your radial artery, you'd barely notice. I'd notice. It'd be annoying. Tanax made a sound like gravel being interrogated. This is exactly my problem. You're sitting here describing survivability metrics that would qualify you as a combat frame, and you're acting like it's background noise. Chun finally looked up, her expression shifting from bored to something that might have been patience wearing thin. Officer Tanax, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. I'm not special. I'm not augmented. I'm not a weapon. I'm baseline human standard. I scored 53rd percentile on my merchant marine physical assessments. Do you understand what I'm saying? The medical bay went very quiet. 53rd percentile, Dr. Krill repeated. Meaning there are humans who can do this better than you, Tanax said. Significantly better. Top percentile are certified for hull breach response without suits. They can operate in hard vacuum for up to 90 seconds while making repairs. There's a woman on Titan Station who once held a failing plasma conduit together with her bare hands for 6 minutes while her crew evacuated. Chun pulled her hand from the gel bath and flexed it. Completely healed. We're not superhuman. We're just adapted for a planet that tried very hard to kill us, and we were too stubborn to die properly. Tanax set down his datapad, picked it up, set it down again. I need to see your homeworld file. Be my guest. He pulled up Earth's classification on his scanner, and Dr. Krill watched his eye stalks droop as he read. She'd seen the file before, everyone had, but she'd assumed it was exaggerated. Tourism departments always inflated their danger ratings to attract thrill seekers. Apparently not. Gravity 13% above standard, Tanax read aloud. Atmospheric pressure lethal to McSorley, Quilvan, and Sultan. Oxygen concentration high enough to be classified as fire hazard. Tectonic instability, earthquakes, volcanic activity, tsunami waves. Predator to prey ratio. He trailed off. This can't be right. It says humans are apex predators. Persistence hunters, Chun corrected. We're not fast. We're relentless. We trap prey until it collapses from exhaustion. Our ancestors would chase animals for days until their hearts gave out. That's horrifying. That's Tuesday. Dr. Krill found herself reading over Tanax's shoulder, her medical curiosity overriding her professional detachment. Buried in subsection 7 was a note flagged in red. Human pain tolerance registers as probable evolutionary error. Suspected adaptation to chronic low-level environmental hazards. Recommend psychological evaluation for all Terran personnel in high-stress roles. You feel pain differently, she said. Chun shrugged. We feel it. We just keep going anyway. Evolution didn't give us armor or claws or venom. It gave us the ability to ignore our bodies screaming at us to stop. She stood, retrieving her uniform jacket. Look, I understand this is strange for you, but where I come from, catching something hot isn't exotic. It's the difference between a controlled incident and a hull breach that kills everyone in your section. We train for this. We drill for this, because out in the black, there's no time to call for help and no guarantee anyone's coming. By dinner shift, the story had mutated. According to Cadet Jaxel, who was holding court in the main mess hall, Chun had not merely caught the plasma bolt, she'd absorbed it, channeled it through her nervous system, and redirected it into the floor with her other hand like some kind of biological circuit breaker. 3 tables over, a cluster of Quilvan cadets insisted she'd stopped it. Mid-flight, using localized gravitational manipulation, a theory that made absolutely no sense but gained traction anyway, because the Quilvan were collectively terrible at physics and excellent at spreading rumors. The Vrexian cadets, being logical to a fault, had simply calculated the energy required to dissipate a plasma bolt through manual contact and concluded Chen was either lying or thermodynamically impossible. They were split on which option was more offensive. Chen herself was in the instructor's lounge, eating reconstituted protein paste and trying to ignore the 17 messages waiting on her datapad. Velkthar sat across from her, his meal untouched, watching her with the intensity of someone re-evaluating fundamental assumptions about the universe. You're not eating, Chun observed. I'm processing. Process faster. You look like you're about to shed. Velkthar's scales rippled in irritation. In my defense, I've spent the last 4 hours being questioned by Academy Director Salmuth about why I allowed a potential combat asset to masquerade as support staff. I'm not masquerading. My file is accurate. Species, human. Role, assistant instructor. Qualifications, merchant marine certification, damage control specialist, 7 years deep space logistics. Chun scooped another mouthful of paste. Not my fault nobody reads past Category C. Auxiliary, because Category C means non-threatening. Category C means you don't bite people who annoy you. Usually. She set down her spork. Whoever had designed it had clearly never held utensils and met his gaze. Commander, what exactly do you think happened today? I think I nearly killed a cadet, and you prevented it using capabilities that shouldn't exist. Wrong. You nearly killed a cadet. And I prevented it using training that every human in hazardous work environments receives by default. There's no secret, no genetic manipulation, just repetition and a statistically high tolerance for doing stupid things until they become muscle memory. The lounge doors opened. Cadet Jaxel entered, followed by 2 others, a Mixori named Pelix and a Sultan designated Cathene. They approached with the cautious energy of people who'd drawn straws and lost. Instructor Chen, Jaxel began, his translator adding an unnecessary tremor of respect. We have a proposal. Chen sighed. No, you haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. The answer is no.